Patricia Townsend, who we're going to hear from shortly, has an exhibition on at Brantwood at the moment at Coniston, which is about trees plus much more. And we're going to hear from Patricia about how that exhibition came about, and what it's about, and what made her do it, and where her inspiration came from. And then we're also going to hear from George Colkitto, who is in Scotland. George is Scottish, as if you don't know him, you will hear shortly, and is also an excellent writer and poet. And he's published a beautiful collection of poetry, not his first by any means, called Shake the Kaleidoscope. I'm looking at it now. And we're going to hear some of the poems from that from George. And again, a bit of a chat about where the inspiration for that piece of art came from, and what the poetry might be about, and what you might be thinking about as you read it and as you hear it. So we're going to hear from George. So a real sort of treat this morning of some lovely art to just sit back, enjoy, reflect upon, and bob any questions into chat. Or I'm a great believer in just asking questions out loud as well. So if you fancy talking about stuff as well, stick your hand up. Derek, late on parade, hang your head in shame. As ever, you are forgiven, Derek. It's very nice to have you with us. Right, so let's start off then with Patricia, who I've never met as ever, but I've met on Zoom 2 or 3 times. Patricia, if you'd like to come off mute, and Amy will line up your slides, and the floor is yours to tell us about your lovely exhibition, your wonderful exhibition, which is at Brantwood at the moment. So off you go.
Okay, I'll just say a little bit about myself first. I'm an artist and a writer, and I was a psychotherapist. So I had a sort of dual career as a visual artist and a psychotherapist, which I gave up my job in the NHS about 15 years ago, and did a PhD at the Slade, where I was doing some research on the creative process of visual artists. And that resulted in a book called Creative States of Mind. So Creative States of Mind, Psychoanalysis and the Artist Process. So, but at the same time, I've been making art all this time, and I use photography, moving image, and installation. I'm usually inspired by things in the natural world in Cumbria, where I live. I live in Lowick Green, just south of Coniston Water, so halfway between Coniston and Morecambe Bay. So I've done quite a lot of moving image pieces about, well, not about, sort of responding to Morecambe Bay. So what I'm really interested in my artwork is our emotional responses to the natural world. And so currently I've got this exhibition on in Brantwood. If you haven't been to Brantwood, you really should, because it's a wonderful house. It's where John Ruskin used to live. It's on the shores of Lake Coniston, wonderful gardens, beautiful views across the lake to Coniston Old Man. And my exhibition's in the Blue Gallery, which is inside the house. It's until October the 8th. So the work which is called Trees, Trauma and Transformation is a response to what the damage done by Storm Eunice at the beginning of last year, when so many trees were uprooted. Particularly, I mean, I'm not sure what it was like in the North Lakes, but here in the South Lakes, it was just a scene of devastation, which I found really distressing. And that sort of gave me the idea that I must make some work that's sort of reflecting my response to it, really. So could I have the first slide, please? So this is just one of the many sort of hillsides of trees. This one's near Elterwater. But all around the area, and I'm sure that was true in the north as well, there were just trees fallen everywhere. It's a bit like seeing, there was a particular hillside on the shores of Lake Coniston where there was it was like a vanquished army. It was just completely flattened. And it was, the wind had come from the north. And I found that very interesting, because the prevailing wind here is from the southwest. So the trees had sort of strengthened themselves, as it were, to withstand winds from the southwest, but they were sort of helpless against this massive wind from the north. And I think that was one of the reasons why so many were uprooted. So I had to then think, well, what am I going to do about this? And I had absolutely no idea at the beginning what I would do. So I just began taking loads of photographs, hundreds of photographs, some like this of sort of where several trees had fallen, some of individual trees, some of little details of the roots. And I got fascinated by particular roots that seemed to me to look almost like human limbs. And the root had just been pulled out of the ground. Sometimes they were almost a pinkish color and smooth, and it reminded me of human limbs. There were sort of others that looked sort of wispy and like hair. I mean, then lots of them where the force had been so great that it had cracked the bedrock under the tree. So there were lots of bits of rock stuck between the roots. And these sorts of things I was photographing. But so I still had no idea what I would want to do. So it took me quite a long time to decide that it was actually the root plates I was interested in. Could I have the next slide, please? Oops.
Sorry, just having a bit of an issue there. I'll just do keep talking and I'll share again.
Yeah. So the next slide is actually of one of the root plates, and I think you'll see why I was attracted to them. Yeah, so I'll wait till it comes up because I want to talk about actually what you can see.
Sorry.
That's all right, don't worry. I'll talk as we go on. I mean, really what I was drawn to with the root plate is that I felt I was seeing something that might never have been seen before. It certainly it was the part of the tree that was under the ground that was supposed to be secret. So it was like the secret part of the tree had been exposed, and it sort of gave me the feeling of the vulnerability of the tree, and I found that, yeah, there we are. We could just get that one up. Yeah, so here's one of them. So some of them are absolutely monumental. This wasn't one of the largest ones, but it was the fairly big ones that I was interested in, because often these were the ones that tended to have the bits of rock stuck in them, that often not necessarily rock that was originally small pieces, but actually often just cracked from the underlying bedrock. And I was interested in the sort of what one could see about the various types of the roots and the rock and how they all sort of related to one another. So I started concentrating on taking lots of photographs about root plates, and particularly, as I say, ones that had sort of rock embedded in them. But I still had no idea exactly what I wanted to do with them. Because when I'm making my art, I tend to want to make things where the viewer is not quite sure what they're looking at. So I needed to transform this in some way, because as these photographs they were documents of something in the outside world, whereas actually what I wanted them to be was yes, some documents of the outside world, but also of what was going on inside me and what other people's emotional reactions might be to them. So I had to find a way of doing that. So that sort of meant a lot of experimentation with Photoshop, with playing around with the images. What could I do with them? And eventually I came up with the next image. If you could go to the next one, that's right. So this was the first image I made that I thought, yeah, I'm on the right track now. This is what I want. This is doing something that I want to do, as it were. It felt right. So what I've done here is take a root plate, get rid of all the background, and then mirror a section of most of the root plate, so I get this sort of shape. And as soon as I saw this, I thought, wow, that looks a bit like some sort of creature. It looks like some sort of creature that's a hybrid between plant, mineral, and an animal. And that seemed to speak to me. It's almost like a sort of an imaginary future creature. But I should say that at the actual the part that's a photograph of the root plate, I haven't changed anything. I haven't changed the color. I haven't added anything. That's the root plate as it was. All I've done is just mirror it and get rid of the bits that I didn't want, concentrate on the parts that I was most interested in. So this was the first image I made. And then I went into, so I decided I would make some more like that with different root plates. So if I could have the next one, please. So in this one, the reason I chose this one is really because of these roots that you see. Well, there are two reasons. The roots that you see, particularly at the bottom, where I was talking about roots that looked a bit like human limbs. And this was one of those trees where that's what it reminded me of. They're not so much in the shape of human limbs on this one, but in others they are. And also in the center, there's a piece of rock which was cracked from the underlying bedrock. So you could see on the ground the rest of the rock. So it's not only the roots that have never seen the light of day, but this inner surface of the rock had never seen the light of day before. So it was really seeing something that was previously secret and hidden and unseen. As though it was as though the trees were revealing their secrets, as it were. So in a way, what I was trying to do was reflect the inner life of the tree, but also my own inner responses to it, all in the same image. That's what I was attempting. Okay, could we have the next one, please? Okay, so here I was sort of interested. Those little roots coming down at the bottom, I was fascinated by the shape of them. And also that sort of cavity. You can see there's a bit of rock just above the cavity on each side. And this one has got this moss around, which somehow I haven't done anything with the colors, by the way. This was the actual color of the moss on the tree. But I sort of felt that was somehow important. So the heart and the whole shape of it. So it's difficult to say exactly why I chose each one. It was a matter of trial and error. I just sort of keep doing different combinations until I got something that felt right. So could we have the next one, please? Yes, this one hasn't got the greenery, but it was something about the wing-like shape of the tree, and for me it sort of looks a bit like a giant bird or something like that. But again, there's a rock in the middle of it, and yeah, I just responded to the shape of it, I think. And then the next one, yeah, this is one of the ones where there were these wispy roots, like almost like hair, but also, so it's partly the roots and partly the sort of the shape of the root plate, or a particular shape within it that I sort of was attracted to. So I don't know. I think everybody sees different things in it. I can say what I see, but somebody else will see something completely different, and that's really why I like to hear what people say when they go around the exhibition, because sometimes they see things in them that I haven't seen myself, and that's good. Okay, could I have the next one, please? This is the last one I'm going to show you. So in this one, and there were quite a lot of root plates where there was a sort of a cavity in the middle, almost like a cave, almost like a sort of secret heart of the tree. And that's really what attracted me to this one, the sort of the center of it, that sort of dark cave, is it almost. But also the sort of the roots at the top, the sort of wispy roots that go across and meet in the middle. But this one I chose because I feel it sort of drew me into the center of something, into the center of the tree, as though the tree's secrets are somewhere in the middle there. Okay, we could move on to the next one. So now here we are in the Blue Gallery in Brantwood. You can see most of the exhibition here. There's a bit to the left that you can't see, that I couldn't fit in. So what it consists of is 8 archival digital photographs that are mounted on aluminium. And I chose to mount them on aluminium because I didn't want to frame them and have glass in front of the image, because I wanted the viewer to be drawn into the image. And I felt that the reflections on glass and the actual fact of there being a barrier between the viewer and the image would interfere with that. So that's why they're on aluminium. And then the next one, please. So here you can see a little bit more about there's a couple of images there that I haven't shown you, and one that I have. And then at the far end, there's a very large screen, 75-inch monitor, and with a high definition video, ultra high definition animation. So what I've done is I've animated the first image that I showed you. And the reason I did that is that I felt in a way as though these were, I didn't want them to look like dead things. I wanted them to have some life. I wanted them to point towards, although I was photographing something that was devastation, I wanted it to point towards the possibility of new life. And so I decided that I would animate this image to show as if it was breathing. And we're going to try and show you that video. I don't know how well it'll come over. So we could have a look at it now. If it looks jerky, or if it looks as though it's not moving, then you really need to go to Brantwood before the 8th of October and see the exhibition.
While we're watching it, Patricia, do you want to tell us how you've done the animation?
Yes, it's done through an animation program called After Effects. And it's done using a particular technique called puppet walk. So you can actually make parts of an image move and keep other parts still.
It's as if it's, you said you wanted to bring life into it. It's as if it's breathing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the effect I was hoping to create. Yeah.
Just incremental little movements.
So I don't know how well everybody can see it, but it's supposed to be a very smooth movement. And
I can see it pretty well.
You can
I think
see
it's
it
moving
well.
smoothly, yeah.
Good, excellent. And I suppose what I want is for people to come into the exhibition and not realize at first that it's moving, and then suddenly think, oh, actually, it's alive, as it were. And the little antennae on the top just move a tiny bit as it breathes. We've just done it for 2 minutes, but obviously it's a continuous loop in the exhibition, so you can watch it, or people can watch it for as long as they want to, or as short as they want to. It just goes on. So yeah, I mean, I think I've told you what I need to tell you about it. And has anybody got any questions or
Well,
thoughts?
there's some lovely comments for you, Patricia, in chat, which I'll just share. Harriet's saying they're exquisite images with so much depth, and I can imagine seeing countless things in them and so much life in them as well somehow. And Chris saying, I love these. They remind me of uncovered spindly creatures clad in protective tree armor. And Kate agreeing they're beautiful. And Kathleen saying, I keep seeing faces at the top of the image. And Derek saying, absolutely what I was thinking as well. These pictures seem particularly poignant after the desecration of Sycamore Gap.
Mm.
The essence of trees is supporting and inspiring other life. I'm reminded of Erlif Shafak's book, The Island of Missing Trees.
Oh,
Highly
yeah.
recommended if you have not read it. I have read it and I agree. It's absolutely
Yes. Fantastic book. I love that book.
yeah. And Hannah's saying something clever here that I don't understand. They remind me of Rorschach tests.
Oh, yeah,
Tanya,
absolutely.
Tanya,
Yes.
tell us what that means.
It's a sort of psychological thing, so Rorschach tests are they're like ink blots, and you're supposed to look at them, and everyone can sort of see different things in them, and it kind of tells you stuff about your mental state. And so I think it's quite interesting that it's about the sort of related to trauma. And then they kind of have that Rorschach kind of element to them. Sorry, I'm not really good at explaining
I can
things.
see that other people know what you're talking about, Hannah.
Yeah,
so
it's
you
very,
need it to acknowledge.
it's very relevant actually. Yeah, it's something I've thought of because it's something that psychologists sometimes use. So you have a bit of an ink on some paper and you fold the paper over, and then you get this image, and it's a reflected image like mine, and then people that say what they see in it exactly. I mean, you did explain it very well. I'm not adding anything really, Hannah.
If anyone's got any questions, just put your hand up. What are you going to do with these images, Patricia, once the exhibition's finished?
It's a very good question. I mean, I'd love to exhibit them somewhere else. I'm sort of entering for the Ruskin Prize, and I'm hoping that they'll go somewhere else. We'll see. Somebody from Lakeland Arts is coming to see them next week. So
Did Brantwood feel like a natural partner for this?
Yes, I mean, I have exhibited at Brantwood before. I seem to do it every 5 years, actually. So, but by chance. So I first exhibited there 10 years ago, when I showed a video installation which was responding to Morecambe Bay. And then 5 years ago, I did something which was, it was really that. Well, there was a video there that was that we had the exhibition to coincide with the winter solstice, and it looked so you walked into the blue gallery and it was totally blacked out, and there was a big screen on the far end as in this, but that was the only thing in the room. And there was an image of something that looked a bit like the moon or a meteor or something that sort of moved in a very rather strange way. So if you're standing in the entrance to Brantwood, you could look in and it just looked as though this thing was hanging in the middle of the room. And there was also another piece which was based on I took pictures looking straight up at the sky as I climbed a mountain in the lakes, and then made these sky pieces, I call them. They were sort of perspex bars, with the photographs of the sky on the bottom, thick bars, and the bar sort of reflected the sky inside the perspex. I'm not explaining it very well. I should have a picture to show you. So it looked as though they were pieces of the sky. So that exhibition was called Black Sun, Blue Light.
Some ideas in chat for you to look at, Patricia.
Yeah,
a second.
that'd be great.
Suggesting some things.
Yeah.
And there's also, I mean, I know there's people on this call who like their trees. And Chris, I'm thinking of when you did that that thing that I saw at Florence Mine, I think, of the thing that kept moving and reflecting and mirroring the shapes. It's reminding me of this as well. And you like these images, right?
Yeah, they're lovely. Yeah, I'm mad into kaleidoscopes at the moment with webcams and things like that. And it's a few people are mentioning the sort of things I see as it's like sea urchins and things like that coming up, a lot of sea creatures. But yeah, as soon as you start reflecting it, it's lovely. The sort of Rorschach things.
And the detail is beautiful, Patricia. Well, congratulations on a beautiful exhibition. I know it's on for another 10 days or a week or so at Brantwood. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Finishes on the 8th, week on Sunday. Okay. So if you get the chance to go, please do.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing it with us, and congratulations on some beautiful art.
Thank you.
It's great to see it, and I love it. It's great. But speaking of kaleidoscopes, Chris has done a beautiful thing there by taking us to this book of poetry, which if you can read, if it's not back to front, as you can see, it's called Shake the Kaleidoscope. So let's move on now and go from the visual to the written. And this is George Colkitto's lovely new collection called Shake the Kaleidoscope, literally coming out in the next couple of weeks or so. And George has kindly agreed to chat about it a little bit this morning and also share, I think, 3 of the poems from it as well, which we've got the words to. So we'll share those on the screen. But George, enough from me. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've come to pull this collection together.
Right. Nearly forgot to unmute myself. Thanks, Tom. I was so engrossed with what Patricia had done just before me. I mean, I always look forward to Friday mornings. This is a great way to end I used to say the working week, but as I don't work anymore, I can't say that. But to catch up with what a vibrant community you have there. But Patricia, I don't know, I was actually going to mention this maybe later on, but I quite like talking to trees. And I sometimes think if you say that, people will think you're going completely mad. But I have, and I had a particular time of trauma in my life when I got up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go out, and I didn't actually hug the trees, but just put my hand against the trees to see if I could actually learn anything from them. Because when you think that they've lived for hundreds of years and absorbed all that knowledge, anyway, that's got nothing to do with Shake the Kaleidoscope, but I just thought I'd mention it. I mean, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to share this with you. Sorry. I mean, there's over 80 poems in the book, so choosing the 3, I decided that obviously I should choose 3 that are related in some way to Cumbria, because this ranges over my life. I should explain that I've always said the years to which they reflect my life or refer to my life, sometimes the years when they were written, but sometimes the year to which the memory which created them related. So every poem is preceded by the year. But I also decided that a bit like the way memory is, where it doesn't work in chronological systems, at least mine doesn't, that I would not have a chronological thing where you go from me young to me, sort of as I am just now. So it just sort of wanders about here. It's not in chronicle order. And also the touching on very small things, because I think we often forget how much the really insignificant, what seems insignificant, somehow in years later becomes so significant for us. I always think about that when I see very young children, that people maybe don't realize how much very small things that they do will have an impact on them. Anyway, I should share some poems with you, shouldn't I? So the first one I'm going to share, if this comes up here, year 41, and it's obviously a place that you will all be familiar with. This was Cafe Bonus in Windermere. It's strange how often I recall that cafe, that afternoon memorable. 2 coffees and 2 buns. The lack of a view to lake or mountain should have other cafes higher on my list, but there was comfort here with you which fixed time and place. Other cafes crowd in to make their claim. Cinnamon toast and Hexham, scone teas and Alnwick, hot peas and the Ritz on Cumbria. There are reasons for me to go back to them. Locations, familiarity, a broken journey. Bo'ness was a short walk through the town, window browsing before going to our hotel, killing time with a cappuccino, nothing to return for, except that feeling of certainty when tomorrow was endless. Thanks. As I say, very small. I can't even tell you anything about the cafe. I think I could possibly take you to it if it's still there, given that this was, what did I say, it was 41. So given this was 32 years ago, the chances of it still being there are maybe slim, but it made a lasting memory for me. Just that warm feeling that you get when you're with someone that you love, and the insignificant suddenly becomes so significant. The next one that I thought I would do, which wasn't chosen at random, I suppose, but it is about Coniston. I've spent many happy days at Ruskin's house at Brantwood, poetry courses there. I've made great friends there. It's partly, well, Margaret and I always loved coming to the Lake District, but that has really cemented my relationship with Cumbria, is the times that I've spent at Brantwood. So this is year 55, mining silver coins on Coniston. Coniston reflects a dance of silver coins from its hammered surface, an arts and crafts view. I watched red sails, a romantic Arthur Ransom movement, slowly passing, a ketch to carry me on its careful passage into the past, quietly confirming why this view talks of ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and poetry on this madding June day. I would worship dale and mist, dream and the hope of dreams, breathe the day-hot air, that tranquil space between lake and evening, breathe out, savour the departing breath. How good it feels, how meant. Just to move on, yeah, it's just, and I would agree with what Patricia said. If you haven't been to Ruskin's home, please go. It is wonderful. And if for no other reason, go to see Patricia's exhibition. I'm beginning to try and work out whether I can get down to the lakes at that time, but I've got other things that I've got organised. So whether I can or not, I don't know, but I would love to. But it's a big go. Just go. The third poem is again about place, of course. It's about place in Cumbria. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. I guess a lot of you will be. That Brigflax is the Quaker meeting house, which lies between Sidra and Kirkby Lonsdale. There's a famous poem about it. I can't honestly at the moment remember who wrote it, but there is a famous poem about it. It is a wonderful place. But also this takes us to other places, to a Welsh chapel, whose name I probably never knew. And if I did know it, I would even try to pronounce it here because I probably couldn't pronounce it. But also then we finish at Notre Dame Cathedral. It's about, again, how places, a bit like I feel like trees, that buildings can actually speak to us, can tell us things, can give us comfort in times of struggle. So, struggle, that's a good word. Year 72. As if. And I remember Brigflats, how the spirit of contentment seeps from wall and pew, the meeting hall like a lifeboat arriving in a swelling gale, so salvation seems possible. And I remember a Welsh chapel with ancient holy spring, and inside it a gate to hold the shepherds' dogs, as if come by and away would herd me into safety. And I remember Notre Dame settling its breath upon me, choir voices clear and crisp, as if angels came to me singing, as if there was a heaven, as if I might kiss my dead. So hopefully that's given you 3 little snippets. We ramble over a lot more things than that, hopefully covering social commentary, personal moments of joy and sadness, some humour, hopefully. But this was 3 which I felt related particularly to Cumbria. So thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity of sharing this with you. Thanks, Tom.
George, thank you. What lovely poems. I've got your book in front of me. I mean, as you say, there's all sorts of poems about all sorts of things. And I really, that whole year 20, so I'm looking at year 27, please mind the gap. That whole thing about you can sort of pinpoint aspects of your life and your age as you go through the book. But I also like the fact that you're dancing around different chronological points in your life as well. When do you write, George?
All the time. Sorry, it's a kind of addiction. I didn't for many years. I wrote my first poem, which I think it says in the book, 14, and I had a dream, or I dreamt a poem. I think I've only dreamt 2 poems in my life, but this was the first one. I woke up in the middle of the night and I had to write this 4-line poem. And it became a kind of mantra for me during my life about how we worry about what we can't do instead of being satisfied with what we can. So having done that, I wrote for a while. I actually wrote a poem for my wife before she was my wife. I didn't know that she'd kept it until she died, and I found it folded up and inside her address book. It isn't in the book, but I write all the time, Tom. But it started when Margaret died. I really had akin to a nervous breakdown. I never believed people had nervous breakdowns before I had a nervous. Well, never diagnosed, but if it wasn't, I don't know what else it was. And I started writing, and I've just been writing ever since. So this collection, that was part of it. Normally, well, I thought about doing a collection. I thought about pulling it together. Someone said to me, "Do you have a project that you want to work on this year? Send it to me." And I didn't have a project. And I suddenly thought, I'll sit down and I'll do a full collection. But normally I would have looked and said, well, what have I had published elsewhere? What I've won competitions with or whatever. And then I thought, I don't want to do that. I'll just scroll through all the poems I've written. And as something grabs my attention, I'll just jot it down. And that's what I did. And then I thought, I don't want it in chronological order. I had this idea of Kaleidoscope. I want you to just be able to dip into the book as you want. You can read it from start to finish, wonderful if you would want to do that. But you can also just pick out a poem. Some you may hate, some you may find very relating to yourself. I want to open windows for people, is the best way I describe it.
That's a really nice way of describing it. Some really lovely comments in chat for you, George. Amy saying a dance of silver coins is such a lovely way to describe the water. I absolutely agree with that, the Coniston poem. And Kathleen, lovely poems, George, particularly the Bowness Cafe one. I was taken right back to Bowness when we walked the Dales Way, and it finishes at Bowness, and you just kind of think, oh yeah, that's the water. And Patricia saying the Coniston one really speaks to me, and the last is so powerful. And I totally agree with what Rob said as well. Thank you, George. Always feels a special gift to hear a poet read their own work. You've got such a, forgive me, George, you've got such a lovely accent compared to my voice anyway. And you just roll your vocal cords around all those vowel sounds. Do you like reading out your own poetry?
Yeah, I do. I actually think, the poems might be rubbish, but I really think I can sell them. So I'll just tell you that now. So I'm selling a poem when I read it, but I'm selling it to myself. They mean something to me. So all I'm trying to do is express that to other people. But hopefully, as I say, it's often said that the art of poetry is what you haven't got in there. And I hope that I put in detail, but the detail I put in is to let you put your own thoughts and memories into what you're reading. So although quite often they refer to I, hopefully the I is also the reader.
Yeah. Yeah, the great poems connect across the boundaries, don't they?
Yeah.
Phil, I'm just looking at what you've put there. So you're obviously familiar with George's work, and again, you've heard him read out stuff before.
Many times. We're spoiled with George coming along every month to the Speakeasy online sessions we started doing during the pandemic, and we keep them up because annoyingly he lives in Paisley, so it's not easy for you to get down to Carlisle every month, but beautiful words, mate. They're great. It's so good to hear them again this morning. Thank you for sharing them. You're a master.
Thanks, Phil.
Always gives us an exciting international dimension to these calls when George joins them. Yeah, absolutely. We think you should relocate, George. But I know you're a frequent Cumbrian visitor to Carlisle and elsewhere, so it's always good to have you with us.
Thanks, Tom. Actually, on the accent thing, just a quick comment was that the first time I really went abroad, I went to Canada on my own when I was 21, and I asked somebody in Ottawa where something was, and he said to me, "Oh, you're from Scotland," and I said to him, "Oh, how did you know?" And he looked at me as though I was completely insane. It was the first time I'd actually sort of realised that I did talk with an accent, because you don't realise.
Right. Thank you very much, George. As I said, Shake the Kaleidoscope is a wonderful collection. It's available from Cinnamon Press, and I commend it to you all to be able to just dip in and reflect. So thank you very much, George, for sharing that with us this morning.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we'll come on to Sycamore Gap shortly, and I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts about it as well. But first of all, Kate, could I invite you just to reflect on, I know we've had a recent theatre and spoken word gathering. We've got a quarterly coming up as well. So over to you to let us know what's going on with the network.
Yeah, so thanks to the Arts Council money, there is more and more going on. So do look out on the newsletter and the Facebook and Twitter, Instagram feeds. So the news just in from Chris Bridgman, who organises the sectoral gatherings, are that, well, they've all gone really well, the ones that we've had in the last few days. And there are more dates coming up now. We've set more dates. So the Visual Arts and Crafts next get-together online is Thursday the 19th of October, 6:30 for a couple of hours. And then the next theatre and spoken word gathering will be on the 29th of November at 6:30 p.m. We are also going to look at a writers gathering, because that's been kind of called for. The theatre and spoken word one is very much about performance, but of course not all writing is performed, clearly. So we're going to look at a separate one for that. We're also going to look at a separate gathering for venue managers, for people who are running, you know, theatres, art centres and that kind of thing, and possibly one for dance as well. So we only work a few hours a week, and we're kind of rolling these things out bit by bit. I know that the music gathering that just happened was a really good one, Gilly. Yeah, I've seen everybody who was there actually in one place or another recently, and everybody has said how lovely that was. So I don't know whether we have a date for the next, Gilly?
No, not yet. We don't. No.
But we very soon will have, and we'll keep everybody posted. So those are really starting to bed in, and anybody is welcome to any of the future sessions. Thank you to the people who are leading those. Yeah, as Amy has said, our next in-person quarterly meeting is at the brewery on the 11th of October, so just a week or so away. We have got loads of people booked onto that, and only a handful of tickets left. I say tickets, it's free, but we do need you to book on. So please follow the link and book now if you would like to come. Again, it's open to anybody. The subject is co-creation. And we will be announcing very shortly the list of speakers for that. But the lack of a list of speakers, which actually does exist, but has not stopped people booking on. And we have got a really good range of people going to talk there.
I think we've got over 70 people booked. So again, just to say, if you have registered, but then you don't come, or you can't come, or you change your mind, please unregister, so that we will have a waiting list for that, I think. So
yeah, we will.
If you've registered, please do turn up. Yeah,
or let us know if you really can't. And then the other thing to say is that on the 17th and 18th of October, we have sessions, we have training sessions delivered by Ian Tabron, who used to work for Arts Council England for several decades, is an extremely nice man, very, very well informed. And this is very much the inside track, therefore, to Arts Council funding bids. They are in-person sessions, one in Carlisle and one in Barrow. The Carlisle session is getting very booked up, the Barrow one less so. So if you are able to travel to Barrow, please do, if you're based around the Barrow area. If you're working in Barrow, for example, Andrew Deakin, please encourage people you know in Barrow to turn up. There is a fee, but we're keeping the fee as low as we possibly can. And if you are unwaged or freelance, there's a lower fee that you can pick if you would like to. If the fee is full stop a barrier, it's really important to get in touch with us, because we don't want the cost of sessions to be a barrier to anyone, and we can help. So drop a line to hello@cacn.co.uk if you want to talk to us about that. Yeah, and as Harriet and Rob Fraser are on the call, hello. The other session to bear in mind and look forward to is on the 22nd of November, which is an online workshop discussion about creative response to environmental challenges. Rob, do you want to say anything more about it? Or Harriet, for that matter?
No. Yeah, I think it's about exactly that. It's how we as artists can respond to the environmental challenges that we're all facing. Of course, climate change is real, and biodiversity collapse is also real, as the State of Nature report kind of starkly outlined in the last few days. So how we as artists can use our skills. You know, we can all do things in different ways, and us artists have brilliant skills, as both Patricia and George have showcased today. So how we can play a part in helping the cause. Somebody once said, and Harriet probably had to help me, I think it was Amitav Ghosh, that what we're entering is a crisis of imagination as much as anything else. So you know, if nothing else, us artists have got a lot of imagination. So we'll be trying to do that over the course of the 2 sessions, is to try and help empower artists, collaborate, work together, to work towards a more fairer world for us as humans, but also for the other than human critters.
Yeah. So that is the first of 2 sessions, in fact. There'll be another one early next year. But so, yeah, please get booked onto these, follow the links there in chat. And it's the start of a rolling programme of more development, training, discussion sessions, and it's all quite exciting.
Thank you, Kate. Lovely stuff. Lots going on. If you can keep up and come along, that'd be fantastic. By the way, the next podcast episode drops this weekend. It's about Westhouse Pottery, of which I'm holding a beautiful plate. Westhouse Pottery is based in Workington. It's an amazing place if you don't know or haven't been there. They've got a great website as well. Christmas presents are available there, I suspect. This is a beautiful plate that I got there when I went to do some recording, and I met some amazingly inspirational people there. Westhouse Pottery, look out for that podcast. Hopefully you might enjoy it and get something out of it as well. So that's coming out in the next few days. All right, well, let's just conclude then and just sort of reflect on the Sycamore Gap tree, because I think it's important. I have been there myself a number of times. A number of people here on this call probably have visited the Sycamore Gap tree as well. And it feels absolutely shocking that it's been chopped down and isn't there anymore. This was me and Hovis. I think this was autumn of 2020. Hovis, Black Labrador dog. And that's the tree. We were just walking. I was walking there with a friend, and that was Sycamore Gap tree, which sadly is no more. So there's been some astonishingly beautiful photographs put on various social media feeds over the last 24 hours. And you know, if you've not been there, it still is a very special place, but it's a bit different and not quite as special perhaps as it once was. So I just wondered if anybody, you know, just wanted to share any reflections about the Sycamore Gap tree, perhaps less on anger, but more about how it makes you feel. Because it made me feel incredibly sad, and I didn't quite know why, when there's all sorts of other shocking things going on in the world as well. Phil says heartbroken. Phil, do you want to just come off? Just tell us your thoughts there.
Yeah, well, I'll just say it in the chat there. It's heartbreaking to hear the news about it. And I was traveling over to the northeast less than 2 weeks ago and saw it in passing because it's visible from the road that runs across the military road there, and it's, you know, it always raised a smile because of the significance and for its starring role in Robin Hood with Kevin Costner. And as I say, to cut it down in an act of vandalism is really spiteful, I think. But you know, nature finds a way. So perhaps one day there'll be another tree to take its place.
Yeah, Harriet.
Yeah, I was just really sad to hear it, and it kind of tapped into that feeling of despair that I have to struggle with on a regular basis when try and look for hope and optimism and look for the silver lining, and something else comes in, like the State of Nature report or penguins dying or whatever it is. And so I think that's really hard. And I also, what I wonder is what the trees are saying. And it makes me think that this is just really symbolic. It's a tree everybody knows, and it plays an important part in people's lives, and that's really important because we as humans have really strong connections with trees. But what are the trees saying? It's not the only example of really thoughtless acts of demonstrating a position of power, which feels really, really wrong. So that's my thought on it.
Thank you, Harriet. Thank you for that. Does anybody else want to share anything? Derek?
Apart from sadness, what strikes me is the utter futility of what has been done. How can that possibly satisfy anyone? It's just so redolent of negativity. It will come out as to who did it and why, I suppose. But it is despair at the futility of such a gesture, and what on earth has driven anyone to do it.
Yep.
Can I say what really worried me is that when you, like a 16-year-old, when you grow up, the mixed messages you get. The news before was about the approval of the Rosebank oil field, and that destroys that area, but it's out of sight. We don't see it. So that's legal. Now he's done something, it's terrible, and that's illegal. But it's like very, very mixed, very, very weird. Why is something allowed and something not allowed? It's both destruction of nature.
Yeah. I think what Amy's put there, symbolic of our disconnection from nature. We are nature. We're not separate from it.
Yeah.
But we're brought up to think we are separate. And, as you've put your nail on the head there, Ursula, the oil decision, the state of the nature report. My sister works for the RSPB. She's the chief exec of the RSPB. She was on Breakfast News yesterday. She's been on the radio a bit as well. And she despairs sometimes of what's going on. However, I don't want us to sort of, think that this is the end and this is all doom and gloom. There are people, some of whom are on this call, trying to do something about this. And I think the arts and culture sector has the option of trying to influence. We can't pull any levers probably, but maybe we can try and influence. Maybe we can try and do things that will affect people's opinions about stuff. Whether there's going to be an opportunity for something beautiful to come out of this tragedy, who knows? But it's probably up to people like us to come up with those ideas. I've seen a few ideas floating around already. And as Harriet says there, what might an artist or group of artists do with the wood from the tree? It's sitting there. It's a beautiful piece of sycamore. I'm led to believe it's a very healthy piece of sycamore as well. So who knows what might happen to that? But as Kate says, we're all bewildered that someone can behave in that way. I just wanted to conclude with a poem, which is, I sometimes go to Larkin, as they say, when things happen. And Larkin wrote a very beautiful poem that a lot of you will know called The Trees. And it's a poem that looks to the future, and it looks at how trees are resilient and can keep going in times of tumult. So this is a bit of Larkin just to conclude the call with, and it's called The Trees. The trees are coming into leaf, like something almost being said. The recent buds relax and spread. Their greenness is a kind of grief. Is it that they are born again and we grow old? No, they die too. Their yearly trick of looking new is written down in rings of grain. Yet still the unresting castles thresh in full-grown thickness every May. Last year is dead, they seem to say. Begin afresh, afresh, afresh. Let's hope that we can all learn from how we feel if you're affected by the Sycamore Gap incident and see where that can take us. But as I said, I think it's up to people like us on this call to think of how we can persuade, cajole, influence people's opinions about why this stuff matters, especially right now. Right, thanks everybody. Next week, we're going to hear from Sarah Griffiths, who's on this call, and her writing, which looks like it's going to be great fun. And also we're going to hear about playback theatre, which is a new idea which is bubbling around at the moment in Cumbria. So playback theatre, also about writing, and Sarah, who is going to enjoy us with her writing as well. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to Patricia and to George for sharing their beautiful work with us this morning. Thanks to everybody for your contributions. I've really enjoyed this call. Thanks to see you all. Have a great weekend, and catch you again, hopefully in a week's time.